I know the budget is yesterday's news, but we wanted to focus on one aspect of the budget that has political and economic consequences: the middle class. We heard this word used a lot yesterday. In fact, before the budget and after it, the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister have used it multiple times. Take a look.
बजट वंचितों को वरीयता देता है। ये बजट आज की एस्पिरेशनल सोसाइटी, गांव, गरीब, किसान, मध्यम वर्ग सभी के सपनों को पूरा करेगा।
मैं भी मिडिल क्लास की हूं, इसीलिए थोड़ा लिबर्टी लेकर के बोलना चाहती हूं। लिबर्टी जरूर लेना आवश्यक है। मिडिल क्लास का प्रेशर्स को मैं समझ पा रही हूं। आई आइडेंटिफाई माई सेल्फ विद मिडिल क्लास, सो आई नो। बट एक विषय में सरकार के अब तक के काम के ऊपर भी आपके सामने रखना चाहती हूं। कोई नया टैक्स मिडिल क्लास के ऊपर नहीं है अब तक।
Okay, but who exactly is the Indian middle class? Now, there is no universally accepted definition that is taught in colleges or used by the government. But in most cases, the middle class is considered to earn between 5 lakh rupees and 30 lakh rupees per year. It's important to note that we are not talking about personal income. We are talking about household income. If the entire household earns between 5 lakhs and 30 lakhs, then the family is middle class. How big is this segment in India? By some estimates, around 43 crore people in India belong to the middle class. That's more than 30% of the entire population. By 2030, their size could make up 47% of the population. For these people, the budget had 4 key announcements. Number one, of course, the tax rebate limit was increased from 5 lakh rupees to 7 lakh rupees in the new tax regime, meaning no taxes for up to 7 lakh rupees of income. Number two, the new tax slabs. Earlier, people earning up to 2.5 lakh rupees were exempt from paying taxes. You know this. That limit has been increased to 3 lakh rupees. Number three, standard deductions will not be applicable in the new regime as well. So if you earn 15.5 lakh or more, you get 52,500 rupees deducted. And number four, the limit on leave encashment has been extended. Earlier, it was just 3 lakh rupees. Now it is 25 lakh rupees. Quick side note, leave encashment is the money that you get for the leave days you have not availed. For example, if you have not availed, say, 4 days leave, you will be compensated for those 4 days based on your basic pay. Until now, the tax exemption limit on those encashments was 3 lakh rupees. It was set way back in 2002, actually, when the average income was much lower. So this time round, the Finance Minister increased it to 25 lakhs. These are the 4 main announcements that concern the middle class. The one-time savings scheme for women can also be included in this list. So can the senior citizens savings scheme. The senior citizens aren't exactly happy with the budget. Now, the question is, why has the government focused so heavily on the middle class? Simply put, because the middle class can change India's political and financial fortunes. Just think about it. 43 crore people can influence any election in any country. Some say it was the middle class who defeated the BJP in last year's Himachal elections. So politics, of course, is one reason. After all, let's not forget, at one point of time, the BJP used to be called middle class ki party. But even an important, probably a more important reason is the economics behind it. No country can prosper if the middle class is not doing well. Let me tell you why. The middle class household income in India is more than twice the earnings of the rich category. They spend almost 3 times as much as the rich, which means the middle class makes up 50% of the income, 48% of the expenditure, and 52% of savings, which means India's fortunes are directly linked to the fortunes of the middle class. Also, the pandemic was really tough for this income category. You know, many of them were laid off or saw their incomes drop dramatically. You see the paradox here, by the way. The middle class is key to India's growth, but when the times are tough, the middle class are also the ones who are the worst affected. The government seems to have understood this paradox. Hence, the multiple benefits given to the middle class in yesterday's budget. Until now, the NDA's budgets have focused on the poor and rural India. Whether it's the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, the toilet scheme under the Swachh Bharat scheme, or the Prime Minister's Kisan scheme. The idea was to court rural India and the poorer sections. After all, that is where the votes lie. But this time, the government has chosen to help the middle class as well. The question is, are these tax cuts enough? And if not, what is a better way to empower our middle class? Because let's face it, even if the middle class makes up 30% of our population, only 1% people actually pay taxes, direct taxes. So there's a wide gap between announcing tax cuts and those tax cuts actually benefiting people. Let me get in my guests this evening, both of them economists, not politicians. I know this could easily have been a political debate, but we decided to keep the politics out of it. Sanjeev Ahluwalia is an economist. He's an advisor at ORF, joining us on the broadcast. Prosenjit Bose is an economist. He's joining us as well. Hi, Prosenjit. Good evening. Good to see you. Will you say that the government has been kind to the middle class? I may disagree with that statement, here and there, but let me get your views in first.
Well, I was listening to your definition of the middle class. So I think that for the purpose of this specific debate, as you said in your opening remarks, that every definition of middle class can be contested. I think that to be on the safe side for the purpose of this debate, let us assume that the middle class is defined in terms of income taxpayers. Because if you really need to focus on what this budget has done, this budget, after introducing a new income tax regime, this time has provided a further rejig of the slabs, income tax slabs, and basically it is trying to, one can say, lure or push, whatever way you want to interpret it, into income taxpayers into the new tax regime. And that is being done by providing some concessions. Now, I think there are three points which I want to make vis-a-vis this. First of all, why is the government doing it? I think that one of the important reasons is that if one looks at a longer term, this government has, over time, if you look at the past 4 or 5 years, especially since 2019, the corporate tax rates were cut very drastically, and therefore corporate tax collections also came down. Comparatively, the weight of the income tax payers in the overall direct tax kitty has increased. Now, you have a situation this year, for instance, where corporate tax collections and income tax collections are almost similar in overall magnitude. So I think that there has been a pressure building from within the personal income tax payers to reduce the rates, because of course the corporates are a more prosperous section of society. So if you are having similar weight in the overall income tax kitty, then it means that the burden of taxation is falling disproportionately on the middle class. I think that is one very important reason why this was attempted. But if you actually look at the extent to which the concession has happened, now because of these two slabs, the examples that the finance minister gave in the budget, they are slightly confusing. What is the meaning of that 7 lakh rebate is not clear to many people. But if one looks at it from the macro point of view, the finance minister put a figure on that concession. It is about 35,000 crore. Now, overall, if you look at income tax collections in this ongoing year, it is over 8 lakh crore. So what is 35,000 crore to 8 lakh crore? So I would say that yes, the finance minister has tried to signal to the middle class. It is more in terms of prodding them to migrate to the new tax regime. But in terms of having a very serious impact on the purchasing power of the middle class, I think it will be marginal, and it will benefit the upper income brackets within the middle class or within the taxpayers more than those who are at the lower brackets.
Okay. Okay. Sanjeev Ahluwalia, come in here. A, respond to what Prosenjit Bose is saying, but B, also respond to, what many people have said to me this morning. Yesterday, we were all, celebrating. We said, "Arey wah, ye to bahut achhi baat hai. Our taxes are going to come down, etc." But when we actually sat down to calculate how much taxes we'll be paying, for example, I'm in the old regime, I realized that the new regime simply doesn't make any sense for me because of the exemptions that I have, because of the home loan I have. So while the move I understand is to sweeten the deal and push people from the old regime to the new regime, I wonder how many people will do it, because many people who are doing their tax calculations realize that probably it is better to stick with the old regime than the new one.
Yeah. I think you've either got a very smart chartered accountant or you are one such chartered accountant yourself. I think that is a correct conclusion that even Prosenjit, my co-panelist, was pointing to.
Go ahead, Sanjeev Ahluwalia. I actually sat with my chartered accountant last evening to figure out whether I should be migrating, and he said, "No, stay where you are." So.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that decision also. Chartered accountancy, when you start doing it, is awfully dull and sometimes not as remunerative as one thinks it's going to be. But anyway, so back to why the government has done it, which Prosenjit started with. The fact of the matter is, as you yourself said in the beginning, there has been a long and a well-documented romance between the middle class and the BJP. And I think for some time, because of the fact that the BJP had changed, it had expanded, it had become a multi-class, multi-caste party. In fact, it became quite firmly the most dominant party in India today. The BJP naturally started catering to others who were in its tent too. But they've come back because the next election is though everybody thinks it's a kind of a cakewalk, it is actually a very tough one. Because, it's only when you reach the top that you realize how difficult it is to hang on to being number one. And in that process, you need all your old friends and you need to make new friends. So the middle class is an old friend of the BJP, to which the BJP is now reaching out. No harm in that. I must say that as far as the income tax rate reductions are done, by the way, they've also benefited those people who are way above the middle class, the very rich. There's a 3 percentage point reduction in their tax burden too. So if you're earning 100 crores, you get 3 crores for jam. So I think it's sort of happened all across the income tax structure. And I think there's a history to this. The BJP, there are many voices in the BJP that don't really like the income tax. They feel that a much better way of taxation is to tax consumption, not income. Now, I don't personally agree with that thesis, but there is a strain within the BJP that believes in that. So, reducing income tax, especially where inflation has eroded the value of incomes, or where you have increased your marginal tax rate to something like 42.5%, which is a very high rate. It makes sense to, graduate those and rationalize those a little bit. But please do remember that, it's not in this budget, it is not just the tax benefits that are being handed out to the middle class. And what does the middle class really want? Most of them live in urban areas, tier 2, tier 3 towns. And if you look at the number of goodies that are there for tier 2 and tier 3 towns, for urbanization in general, for improving the financial condition of municipalities, for including them under the interest-free guaranteed 50-year loan that the government is now extending to state governments. All that is also going to benefit the living environment in which the middle class thrives. Look at, for example, the amount that is being spent on railways. And what is that money being spent on? It is being spent on station upgradation so that, the comforts of home are available to the middle class on the station also, just like it is in an airport. It's being spent on improving the speed of trains. It's being spent on making trains modern and digitally equipped. These are all things that create a home away from your home for people who are not rich, but who have got used to some minor luxuries, like accessing their mobile phones, being able to complain on the phone itself if the toilets are not being cleaned, and 100 other things like that. So if you take a broader look at the budget, you will find that all the things that excite the middle class, capital has been allocated for that. And I would say there is no harm in that at all. Not only because of the excellent point you make that in general, the middle class is actually the cornerstone actually of growth and of resilience in the economy. Don't forget the resilience part, because it is the poor can't save, It is the middle class that saves because they have a streak of independence. They want to be self-sufficient. They don't want to be, anybody's mohtaj. They don't want to spread their hands in front of anybody. They're proud. And many of them, some are, of course, salary owners, but a lot more of them are traders, merchants, professionals. And that is actually part of the very robust middle class that the budget has played to. And I personally think there's no harm in it at all. So I would congratulate the FM on that.
Absolutely. Prosenjit, there is no harm in that. The fact is that a lot of people have compared Nirmala Sitaraman's budget to, Rahul Dravid at the innings. It's stable, it's a bit boring, but it's stable and it'll keep you on the right track. So no harm. Would you agree that the budget has been good for the middle class and we should just thank the government for it without nitpicking?
Well, I don't think that there is any harm, but I don't think that the relief that has been provided in the income tax regime, that is very substantive. I think that is the point. That would be my critique. That it is the steps that have actually been taken, as you are yourself pointing out, that if it is the question of a new taxation regime, and if people are finding, most people, I would say, most income taxpayers are finding that migration to the new regime is actually going to lead to more income tax outgo than the older one. Then what exactly is the relief that the government is talking about? I think that the way the whole thing has been structured is very confusing. It goes against the very logic of tax rationalization, which is to make taxation simple, the tax structure simple. I think it has been made unnecessarily complex, and it is benefiting the higher brackets of income taxpayers disproportionately. The benefit to the lower bracket of income taxpayers, who are larger in number, that benefit is very marginal. That is what I am saying. So I don't think that it is in terms of causing any harm. I think it is basically promising people something which actually is not there. It's trying to create an impression that a lot has been done, but actually in real terms, it is not very substantive. But I would also like to add that just like in certain under certain heads, the expenditure has been increased, like in railways or in other some other sector like power generation and infrastructure and so on. But there have been cuts as well. And those cuts are going to somewhere harm the middle class as well. Because you have cuts in food subsidy, you have cuts in fuel subsidy, in petroleum, so we know what has happened to LPG prices. You got people through Ujjwala Yojana, a new middle class or that so-called aspirational class to migrate to LPG connections, and then you remove the subsidy and increase the price. So then are you really helping that aspirational middle class, or people who have just joined the ranks of the middle class? I think you are basically what you are contributing to by withdrawing these subsidies, fertilizer subsidies also, I think you are basically contributing to inflation in the future. I think that will be the harmful part. So, to the extent that the subsidy cuts would contribute to inflation, I think that is something which was avoidable. It could have been avoided had the budget really kept the interests of the middle class in mind.
I'll let Sanjeev Ahluwalia just quickly respond to that. But as taxpayers, I think all of us know that there are no free lunches. But Sanjeev Ahluwalia, would you want to respond to the point of inflation?
Yeah, I mean, 2 points on what Prosenjit just said, very eloquently, I might add, that, the first thing is that inflation is actually declining already. This is what the Reserve Bank of India tells us. And its forecast for next year is below 6, right? So it's somewhere, I don't know how much, but somewhere in the region of 5 or 5.5%. So inflation is declining and it's under control. And, I did not, for instance, enumerate that the wonderful job that our diplomats had done in keeping, fuel prices low. This is something that during the Ukraine crisis and beyond, by arranging alternative supplies from Russia and so on. This is something that directly benefits the middle class. So I think Prosenjit has a point that the benefits accrue disproportionately to the richer of the middle class and not to the poorer of the middle class. But the problem is that tax cuts can only compensate you for what you're paying. If my income is only 10 lakhs and yours is 1 crore, right? Even a 1% reduction in your tax rate will mean a lot more than, say, a 5% reduction in my tax rate. So I think that comment is technically correct, what Prosenjit said, if you count it in rupee terms, but if you count it in terms of proportion of expenditure, then it would not be correct. Because as a proportion of expenditure, if yesterday I was liable to tax and today I'm not liable to tax, that straight away makes me nominally richer, though we have to recognize that inflation would have taken away some of our purchasing power. So I think broadly, within the limits of a budget exercise, the FM has tried to do what is best, keeping the basic structure of income tax in place. And more importantly, I think that all the other schemes that have been laid out are actually going to benefit disproportionately, if you want to say that, the middle class, which is at the lower end. So for the lower end, of course, it's not tax cuts. Those are the other schemes. Now on food, please do remember that the FM said they're continuing food support for 800 million people. Now, if you're not part of that 800 million people, then I think you may not be, a lot of the middle class would already be covered in those 800 million people, right? We only have 1,400 million people here. So, so I think that if you broaden your perspective beyond tax, public money is being spent on the middle class in improving the quality of their lives and improving their schooling. There's a big push on education which will directly benefit them. So I think overall, middle class should feel happy. I'm not saying that because of that they should vote for the BJP. They should make up their own minds. But the BJP
Okay.
has done something good, that even the next government, even if it is something else, they'll have to do the same thing. Yeah.
No, as you said, there is an enduring love between the middle class of this country and the Prime Minister. I won't say the BJP, but the Prime Minister. That continues. Does that get strengthened after yesterday? I don't know. I mean, as I said, I sat with my tax consultant yesterday, and he told me, just stay where you are. But anyhow, you're right. Maybe we should look at this from a broader perspective and not just from a tax perspective. We leave it there for the moment. Gentlemen, good to have you on the show and good to chat with you. Sanjeev Ahluwalia and Prosenjit Bose, thank you very much for joining us here on Mirror Now. Thank you very much indeed. On that note, I'm slipping into a quick break on the show. Coming up next, we have Sania Mirza talking to us exclusively about her post-retirement plans. Do stay tuned in for that.
When it comes to making your drive electric, never settle for the ordinary. Go EV with India's #1 EV, Nexon EV.